We'll try to get back into it here where we can hear some of God's Word. And I'm not my favorite teacher, or anything. So this morning, unfortunately, you got me to deal with. But we'll let the Spirit take control of this and see what He wants to do. If you want to go there, you can. I'm in Luke chapter 11. Verse 37. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know, you ain't heard. I don't think this morning, but definitely want the Lord to have His way. He's the one who put this thought in my mind a while back, and I'm pretty sure I know why He did it, but we're just going to let Him have His way. Anyway, verse 37 says, and he spoke, and as he spoke, a certain Pharisee asked him to dine with him. He's talking about Jesus. So he went in and sat down to eat. When the Pharisee saw it, he marveled that he had not first washed before dinner. Then the Lord said to him, now you Pharisees, you make the outside of the cup and dish clean, but your inward part is full of greed and wickedness. Verse 40 says, foolish ones, did not he who made the outside make the inside also? I just want to stop on some of this stuff because I want to take a minute and figure out. I want to figure out who these people were. I know back God had give Moses something to do. He wanted him to set apart like a council, and it was the Sanhedrin, I think is how you pronounced it. There were 71 of them. Some of them were Pharisees, some of them were elders. They had one priest. So this kind of descended from that era, the Mosaic time, the Mosaic laws. These Pharisees, I want to know what a Pharisee was, and you know what Christ is, right? Christ is the anointed one. So the Pharisee means separated one. So in this, I think the Lord wants you to know right off the bat, but these folks try to separate themselves from like anybody who brings any kind of doctrine besides what they believe. They only want to make the laws known. They want you to follow the laws. And they'll make their own laws to fit what they want. When he didn't like the fact that Jesus sat down before washing, I know most of us, we wash our hands before we eat a meal and stuff, but they had a ritual, and the ritual was that they had to wash their right hand 3 times and they had to wash their left hand 3 times. This was a ritual, and it was because they had a basin. It was to begin with, I believe it was the Levites that they had this basin sitting there in front of the temple, and as they went in, they were supposed to wash their hands, purify themselves as they did this. So that's why the Pharisee here is thinking that Jesus is unclean. But Jesus was looking more deep into something else there. Instead of looking at the outward side of the cup, he wanted to look at the inside of the cup. And what he was trying to tell him was, in your heart, you're full of greed. Okay, you have no mercy, you have no nothing. Maybe you ought to examine yourself, because taking upon yourself, you're looking at the outside of me and you don't think I'm clean. But really, Jesus was the purest thing that was in the house. They always looked upon him, no matter what it was, they tried to condemn him ever since day one. And the reason why is because he brought a gospel that they'd never heard. But instead of listening, sometimes we're very close-minded. I know it works sometimes. I think I got all the answers. I'm the older gentleman there, so I think I got everything under control. And sometimes the young guy will come in, he'll have an ideal. And I'm like, nah, it won't work. I just shut it down right off the bat, And I'm learning, God is teaching me that I need to listen. Because they have some good ideals. And, because of this, it's like the Pharisees were so close-minded because they knew all the laws and they knew what they wanted the laws to be. What I mean by that is man has been trying to change law ever since day one. Even in our lives right now, they're trying to change laws that's been put in place. Now, some laws, I'll agree with them. They need to be changed. They need to be examined, looked over, and done away with. But there are some laws that need to stay there. He said, I'll go back to this. He says in 41, he says, but rather give alms of such things as you have, than indeed the things that are clean to you. In 42, he says, but woe to you, Pharisees. Now, I kept thinking, what is woe? Well, it's a warning. It's trying to warn them, you're crossing lines here that you don't need to cross. Or at least take a minute. The big thing is taking a minute to examine yourself sometimes. We don't always have the right answers. Sometimes we need to look at ourselves and see exactly what God wants us to do, not what we want to do. Right? But he says, woe to you, Pharisees, for you tithe mint and rue and all manner of herbs, and pass by justice and the love of God. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. In Micah 6 and 7, it says, will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. So they didn't know this. Later on, I'm sure I'll read down through here, but the next verses and stuff, it talks about how these folks loved the acclamation of somebody saying, hello, good morning, Pharisee. They loved that. They loved sitting in the high seats in the synagogues. And they loved looking out amongst the people and thinking that they're high and mighty because they hold something they think that nobody else has. But Jesus was there to break that. He was there to break that because they thought they had it all figured out, and it was all these laws and stuff they were putting on man, which was a burden to man. It wasn't something that needed to be done anymore because, for one thing, the Messiah was there. So we needed to break down those laws and stuff. And, that's the whole thing about this. Before I even go any further, I'm just going to say this. So we see a lot of things in the world today. And there's been a lot of going back and forth, and you know about what, and I get it, and I really didn't want to get involved in that. Not that I didn't appreciate someone telling the world the gospel or anything like that. But I look upon a man that walked this earth a long time ago that needed more praise. And he taught more than anybody else could teach. That's why he said, don't let them call you rabbi, rabbi, because your teacher's already here. So we all have a calling to do. And this morning I feel like when he says, whoa, I was like, I can remember a time, Lord, in your word when you were mad at the money changers and you flipped the table over. And I can remember we had a study on that, and I said, well, maybe he wasn't mad. I said that, and Pastor said, well, Brother Stacy said maybe he wasn't mad, maybe because he sinned not. But I also know that he chased them with whips. So apparently he did not like what they were doing, one way or the other. And what I see of that is they were exchanging money because in that day you had to have a certain kind of money. It wasn't to come into the temple, you were paying temple tax is what they charged. And they had to exchange that money from other regions to what fit where they were at. But Jesus said that you've changed it into a den of thieves. Because they were robbing the people. It wasn't about the money exchange or anything like that. They were robbing the people. You're charging somebody, you bring your offering and your sacrifice, and you lay it on the altar and you do what you do. You bring your tithe or whatever. But it's not about taxing people. That's why Caesar, when he said, let Caesar have what's his, Caesar was taxing people. The Lord just wanted people to be free. Jesus wanted people to have that freedom, that they could understand that they're not bound by these laws and these things anymore. Now, he didn't say that not to do them, but he says to do what's right in the heart. See, when God looked upon the heart, he seen that the heart was continually wicked. We talk about a mindset all the time and changing our mind and our thinking and stuff. And we have to, but that heart is where the problem is. Because your heart will go after whatever it wants to go. You can change your mind, but if your heart's in something, it'll change back quickly if you don't get the heart changed too. So he was trying to tell them in this that they needed a change of heart, is what he was trying to tell them more than anything. And he says, "Woe to you, Pharisees, for you love the best seats in the synagogues and the greetings in the marketplaces. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like graves which are not seen, and the men who walk over them are not aware of them." Luke 11:44 says, "The danger lies in the unseen rot and deception within the Pharisees' hearts and teachings. Their hidden sins and false teachings made them spiritually unclean on the inside, though trying to show cleanliness on the outside." I don't really like to get into pointing fingers and stuff. I'm just going to say that everyone who calls themselves a Christian, they don't walk upright with God. And I'm not here to condemn anybody, nothing like that. I want them to know that there's a change if they change their heart after Jesus. Because you can think you know everything. You can think you know this word front to back and everything else. But if your heart isn't changed, if you can't lift him up and tell people about him, and you can't do those things without making some kind of, stipulation. To me, it's kind of like, well, yeah, I'll talk to you about Jesus, but you got to come to my house. If you had a stipulation like that, that's what the Pharisees basically did. Before you come into this place, you need to wash your hands, you need to wash your feet. While they were worrying about that, Jesus is feet washing, because he's washing the feet, because where they step is going to be holy ground. Because they're carrying the word, the gospel, the truth. And that's the thing I've found today that's a big problem for people and why they want to do away with people who are seeking after God is because they don't want the truth. The truth sets you free. You don't have to be in bondage no more. You don't have to lie after lie or do these things. But once you find the truth, you can set it free. You can just tell people about God. And yes, it's going to cost something. It absolutely will. Everybody who has proclaimed the gospel so far, it has cost them something. But that still shouldn't stop you. Me and my wife was somewhere the other day, and I can remember. You ever remember somebody always saying, "Well, you only live once"? I remember when I was a teenager, I said that plenty of times. You only live once. And now it's me and my wife will be somewhere or something, and she'll say, "Well, I don't know if I want to." I was like, "Well, just do it." I said, "We're meant to live forever. Just go ahead and do it. We're meant to live forever." A lot of people don't think that way because we're in this place where we know that there's graves coming and all this stuff. But some people are already in the grave with their mind, with the way they think and what they do, and that's what he's trying to tell them, that you're as dead men. You're as dead man. You can proclaim, you can have the most whitewashed tombstone out there, the best looking one, the high one. Everybody goes, "Wow," when they go by, but it's still full of bones. It doesn't hold anything. Now, where he got me at, and I don't know if it's going to be the same for you, but where he got me at was when it started in the verse 45. Then one of the lawyers answered and said to him, "Teacher, by saying these things you reproach us." And he said, "Woe to you also, lawyers." Do you know who the lawyers were? They were the scribes. The scribes were the ones that basically was like in the court. You know how you have the person taking the notes in the court and all that stuff? It was the same thing. They were just doing that. But anyway, It says, for you load men with burdens hard to bear, and yourselves do not touch the burdens with one of your fingers. They won't lift a finger to help nobody. All they want for you to do is come into the synagogues, you pay their tax, you do their bidding, you do it the way they say you do it. And I know that goes along with some of the places today out there that you come into their place, you're going to dress a certain way, you're going to have a certain haircut, you're going to do all these things. And I'm seeing right here, by this word right here, that does not hold nothing. That holds nothing. What holds is the words of life. What Jesus taught, what Jesus came to say, and what He did for us. Woe to you, for you build tombs of the prophets, and your fathers killed them. It says, in fact, you bear witness that you approve the deeds of your fathers, for they indeed killed them and built their tombs. Therefore, the wisdom of God also said, I will send them prophets, apostles, and some of them they will kill and persecute, that the blood of all the prophets which was shed from the foundation of the world may be required of this generation. It says, from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who perished between the altar and the temple. Yes, I say to you, it shall be required of this generation. And he was telling this because Abel would have been the first martyr that died. Even though his brother put him to death, he was put to death because of his sacrifice and because of what he did for God. It's the same nowadays. It's the same when Zechariah, and that's what he was talking about. They will not be guiltless over Zechariah either because they killed him. Because he was warning the king at the time about giving into idols. Some say it was also because his son John the Baptist, they were looking for him and they killed him. Either way, he was sacrificed for what he believes in. And today, I know this ain't going to be a long message or nothing, but today I just want to bring that up that, there's going to be pain, there's going to be suffering, there's going to be things. And man, I know it's quiet in here, and I know you guys think, this is dreary and everything else, but I want you to know that this is the Lord's. When He talks about them tithing and everything, they don't know nothing. The herbs that they tithed came from the Lord. Any money that they brought came from the Lord. Any gold that they brought came from... See, they were more concerned about the gold in the temple than they were getting people in the temple. And that's the thing. We don't need to put stipulations on anything. We just need to help. We need to love and mercy. The two greatest commandments, love thy God, and love your neighbor as yourself. He said that more than anything. Out of all the 10 commandments, everything, 613 commands given, none of those meant anything except what Jesus said. He gave the two greatest commandments at that time. Woe to you, lawyers, for you have taken away the keys of knowledge. You did not enter yourselves, and those who were entering you hindered. So they didn't come into the kingdom because of their blindness. And anybody who they found or tried to follow them was the same way. When we say the blind lead the blind, they both fall in a ditch together, we've said that several times. And, it's no more true. If you just blindly lead yourself behind somebody, follow somebody, you could absolutely fall in a ditch and you may not make it back. That's why it's important to look at these words, study them, and see what it meant. I know this is nothing that I've taught you nothing today more than what's in this word. But if you read the word, you'll know all this. You'll know who it is. And you need to find out more about who He was, why He said it. The thing that got me is everything that He said here was with an exclamation point. In other words, it meant something. He was trying to get through to them and tell them something. Even at this time, He was still trying to save the Pharisees. They just didn't realize it. Instead, they took it as a rebuke. And you say, well, how do you know that they were that bad when they were trying to follow law and stuff? Because they brought accusations and tried to find false accusations to have somebody testify against Stephen, Jesus, all of them. If you read your word, it says it right in it. They brought false accusations from them. They tried to find people. They paid people to betray people. Watch who you're following today. I don't want you to follow me. I want you to follow Jesus. You know, these are words straight from the book right here. This holds life and death. Either which way you go, it's your choice this morning. But he wants you to know more than anything that all this stuff that's going on outside of here, that you still have a voice. You still need to proclaim this. No matter what's happened and everybody's down about a man that lost his life, but he lost his life and he was still proclaiming Jesus. He was still trying to tell people who Jesus was and is and ever will be. And that's what we're called to do, regardless of what happens to us. These bodies are not meant to, man, you know, every day I get out of the car and it's like my hips hurting, my legs hurting and stuff. I'm like, how long is this going to go on? Please help me, God. But this body ain't made. This body's only made to stay here for a certain length of time. And what it's meant to do is raise up the name of Jesus and tell people about Jesus. So this morning, just watch who you follow. And we've been talking about this for a long time, about other places that require certain things for you to be in. But I want you to go anywhere. I don't care who you are. I don't care if it's my family. You go somewhere where you're being fed. You go somewhere where you have freedom. You go somewhere where you're taught about Jesus and not about laws and precepts, you know, unless you're talking about the Lord's precepts. We don't need to be held by a law or defined by a law. We just need to love one another, y'all. I appreciate you listening today. I hope you got something out of it, and I thank the Lord for giving it to me. We're going to be back here in just a little while. Give some praise and worship this morning and give God everything. Always give Him everything that you have. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you're sitting in a seat. It doesn't matter if all you can do is raise your hand or just yell. He appreciates everything that you do. I don't care if it's a yee-haw or whatever it is. So